Welcome to Destination Business Freedom, hosted by Pat Mancuso. Join us as we explore success strategies and hacks from leading entrepreneurs, helping you bridge the gap between financial success and personal freedom. Your journey starts here.
My name is Pat Mancuso, and welcome to the Destination Business Freedom Podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest with us. I am super excited for a number of reasons to introduce you to this gentleman in just a second. First, I want to share with you our purpose of our podcast, and that is to help business owners, entrepreneurs get to that destination, that exit address. That's the whole reason they started a business or acquired a business. We want to help them close their gap between their finances and their freedom. And on our podcast, what I do is I bring some incredibly talented individuals who have exited businesses, are still in business, but ultimately bring the value to help business owners in various parts of this journey to get to that destination address, to get to that exit. So we're really excited today about our guest. I know we're going to have an amazing time. Before I jump in, though, I want to talk to you about our sponsor today. The Mancuso Consulting Group sponsors our episodes. And through that sponsorship, they've offered an amazing gift for everyone. If you go to www.themancuso.com, you can take a short assessment. And with that assessment, that will allow you to receive a free report of an itemized checklist of the things that are really important to get to that destination address. And that'll also allow you to schedule a call with Pat. And in that call, he's going to provide $10,000 worth of value. Otherwise, he'll write you a $500 check on the spot. www.themancuso.com. So without further ado, let's jump in. I want to introduce a gentleman to you that really does not need an introduction. However, I'm going to share his background. His name is Ryan Deiss. And I'm going to read you what the accomplishments of Ryan, and I could probably just summarize them, but there's so many important pieces of this. So Ryan is a serial entrepreneur, author, and investor. And according to Damon John from Shark Tank, he actually, companies practically own the internet. His companies own the internet. He's also the founder and CEO of Scalable Company and DigitalMarketer.com, and the founding partner at Scalable Equity LLC, and an equity accelerator that builds and acquires business-to-business media and software brands. Today, I'm actually in San Diego at the Epic board meeting, and he's a partner also with Roland Frazier, and that's what allowed us to have access to Ryan, and so we're super excited for that partnership as well. Ryan is also the founder and host of Traffic and Conversion Summit, the largest digital marketing conference in North America. He also quite literally wrote the book on modern marketing, digital marketing for dummies. I love that. I haven't bought that one yet, Ryan, read it, but I do need to. Now it's its second edition. As a sought-after speaker, Ryan has shared the stage with top business leaders and celebrities like Dr. Richard, Sir Richard, let's not give him, well, he probably might be a doctor too, right? Sir Richard Branson, Gary Vaynerchuk, Sarah Blakely, Martha Stewart, Tim Ferriss, Damon John, and Dave Ramsey. Holy Hannah, you know some people that I want to get to know through you. Most importantly, Ryan is a proud father of four and husband to Emily, to whom he gives all the credit for everything he has ever done. And I know that to be true, Ryan, because when I listen to your podcast, you absolutely bring that piece in the family to that. So welcome today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate the kind introduction. It is always, I hope we get into some of the real stuff, because the bios are always the good. They're like the good things, but it's not the real stuff, right? So I think we'll get into the real stuff and maybe some of the stories behind some of those stories that aren't quite as glowing.
Well, and that is so true. And again, I followed you and for a long, long time. And I know in listening to your podcast, you do bring that realness to the table. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs and business owners to hear that. So we definitely want to drill into that today. So we're gonna talk in two parts. We're going to talk first about your journey as a business owner. And I'd really love to pull out of you some of the things that maybe you didn't know when you were going through the journey, you wish you would have known sooner in the journey, to help business owners who may be thinking about exiting, maybe they haven't thought about exiting, and just the things that they need to know. Far too often, business owners, in my opinion, don't have the information they need to be making these decisions earlier in that journey. So I want to pull that out And then definitely we're going to jump into your recent book. I love it. I told you when we started, I couldn't put it down after reading it. So I definitely want to jump into that as well. So let's start with Ryan. Talk to me about how you actually got into being an entrepreneur. Like, where did that journey start? It started
from my freshman dorm room in 1999. And I did not set out to be an entrepreneur to launch a business. I'm not sure I knew what an entrepreneur was. I definitely couldn't spell entrepreneur. I just knew I needed some money. It really is simple. I met a girl, and I knew within a couple of
that
weeks
always
of meeting
means you need money, right?
Yeah, man. I met a girl. I knew within a couple of weeks of meeting this girl that she was probably the woman I was going to marry. Didn't tell her that at the time because I knew that'd be a little bit creepy.
Sure.
But I just knew, and I knew, okay, it was weird because I'm a kid, right? I mean, 19 years old in college. I'm the same age as my oldest son, basically, who's a child, right? He's mine. And so there I am. And I just suddenly had this realization that, oh my gosh, I'm an adult now. At some point, I'm going to need to do adult things like, buy the woman I love a diamond ring. And yet I have no money, and diamonds are expensive. And that was the full extent of my business planning, right? Yeah. And it literally was just, can I make some extra money? Because I was going to college on grants and scholarships. I had a part-time job to cover, food and shelter, but there was nothing left over. And it was the first time I realized that I'm broke, and that's a problem if I want to be able to do some other stuff. And that was where it began. My first business was doing web design for people at that point in time. You think back to 1999, it was sort of, the .com era. Nobody knew what they were doing. And so I didn't either. But if I could learn stay a couple of days ahead of everybody else, what do you know? You're an expert. Yeah. And so that was where I got my start, building websites, selling little products on the internet. Fast forward a couple of years, I got the ring, I got the girl, and that stupid little web business had ballooned into dozens of little websites selling a bunch of little products. And I had a full-blown business earning me, as a college senior, a full-time significant six-figure income. I didn't realize it was a lot of money. I certainly had no idea what I was doing, but that was where it all began.
Well, it's always fun when I talk to entrepreneurs and business owners. And that's pretty common, how it happens in the beginning. And yet there's always something, right? Like that's inside of people that drives them to that, because, everybody can kind of experience what you described and what you experience. And yet you took and you acted upon it, which is the difference, in my opinion. So as you started that journey, and again, you weren't setting out to be an entrepreneur, what things did you get challenged by? Like, what were the things that struggled you the most in the beginning of that journey?
I think one of the worst things that happened to me early on in my career is everything worked. First 3 years, I had no real expenses. I had no employees. It was just me. When you think about all the difficulties and challenges and complexities of business, I didn't have them. And yet I was in this amazing time where the internet was new, and where ranking, number one on Google was, just as easy as just stuffing a bunch of keywords in the bottom of the page. So, looking back on it, I had no cost of sale really to speak of. My operating margins were fundamentally 100%. Like, it was really hard to screw up. And so let's call that what it is. I was lucky. Now, to your point, I took action and other people didn't. So I think the opportunity for luck was there for everybody. I took it, they didn't, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But it wasn't until I graduated and I decided, okay, I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to take this business thing seriously, that the challenges emerged. And the first challenge that emerged was one of cash flow. I'll never forget it. Google did this little algorithm shift, and overnight, every single website was removed from the rankings, right? Wow. Just about every single website I had was removed from the rankings. Now, in fairness, I was doing some kind of spammy gray hat, stuff to rank. Yeah. And so I deserved it. I had it coming. But like the first big challenge that I faced was I was dependent upon one source, one channel for my customers. And I realized, okay, this is a problem. I need to figure out how to make this work. And so I decided I was going to get and learn the ad side of the game. I need to figure out, I bet if I'm writing them a check, they're going to keep sending me people, right?
Sure.
And I was right, and they did. But that's why I say now margin compression becomes a thing, because for the first time ever, I'm having to invest in customer acquisition.
Right.
And I didn't know what I was doing. And so, like a lot of accidental entrepreneurs, like I was, didn't know what I was doing, had no real clue what was working. I tried everything and I flailed around. And in trying to do everything, I wound up still generating decent revenues. But it was the first time I learned that, it doesn't really matter how much top line you generate. That doesn't necessarily guarantee there's going to be bottom line.
Yeah.
And there wasn't. And I had a line of credit because back then, man, I mean, this is pre financial crisis. If you could fog a mirror, they'd give you a $250,000 signature line of credit.
Think how many people they gave mortgages to that didn't qualify for mortgages, right?
No, at least the mortgage, there was a house attached to it.
Yeah, you're right.
$250,000 backed by nothing. And I had this $250,000, this line of credit, because it was through Wells Fargo, which I was banking with at the time. Anytime my bank account hit zero, it would just pull from the line of credit. Now, keep in mind, I don't know what accounting is. I don't know what finance is. I don't have a P&L, a balance sheet. I don't have these things. The way I ran my business was, as long as there was cash in the bank, and ideally if there was more than the previous month, I was good. Well, in having this line of credit, it was pulling from that. I didn't get a sense that, hey, idiot, you're actually losing money every month.
Right.
And in addition to that, because I wasn't making a lot of money, I wasn't able to take distributions. Now in my personal life, I'm putting everything on credit cards. So if my wife and I are going out to dinner, well, that's going on a credit card. If we're buying furniture, that's going on a credit card. If I got to pay, the landscapers, that's going on a credit card. And all of this culminated. I remember I was sitting at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, Texas. I was actually at an event, at a business event, one like the one that you're at, learning about how I'm going to be super successful and I'm going to take over the world. And I'm sitting there and I'm at the bar and I go to pay my tab because I'm like, I want to make sure I'm in the room up and at 'em early the next morning. So I go, hey, can I tab out? And I gave him my, I didn't give my debit card because I knew that was probably not going to be good shape, but I gave my credit card and it declined. And I went, that's weird. And so I'm like, here, try this one. And it declined. I'll try this one and it declined. I went, pull up my bank account. And I realized that my bank account's at zero. I go and look at my line of credit and I had completely drawn down all $250,000. I had no money in the bank. I had $250,000 out on a line of credit and every single personal credit card I had was maxed out as well. I was worse than broke, right?
Yeah.
I was in about $330,000, $40,000 of debt and I didn't know how to fix it. And I'll tell you, I remember sitting there at that bar, it was everything I had to not cry.
Yeah.
Realizing what I'd done because I had a brand new wife, we had a brand new baby and a brand new mortgage. And like, what have I done? And it was in that moment when I thought, okay, you got a choice. What you gonna do? And I recall the conversation I had with a friend of mine. Weeks before, we were just talking about how, isn't it interesting how so many businesses were started on the back of a napkin?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. That conversation just popped into my head. And, and he said something. He's like, I bet there's something magical about the napkin. I bet it's constraint, the simplicity of it. If you can describe your business on a napkin, then you probably really have a business. And if you can't, then it's probably too complicated and you don't. It was a passing comment. I didn't think anything of it in the moment.
Right.
But all that rushed back to me right there sitting at that bar. And I look up and sure enough, there's a stack of cocktail napkins. And so I just remember reaching out and grabbing one.
Yeah.
And I borrowed a pen from the bartender and I said, I made myself a deal. I said, if I can describe how my business works on this napkin, then I'll figure it out. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Borrow the money, steal the money, whatever I got to do, I'll figure it out. And if I can't, then I'm going to leave the event early, go home, confess what I've done to my wife, file bankruptcy and see if I can get a job. And I did it that day. I wrote on the napkin, here's how business works. It was super simple. It was a basic little, outline drawing, nothing particularly magical about it. But I remember looking at it and saying, that's it. That's it. But I learned a lot of hard lessons from that experience, man. And I was probably 4 or 5 years in business before the all came down.
You know, Ryan, so we do business consulting and we've worked with about 800 businesses in the last 2 years. And as part of that process, we've had to collect their financial statements. And one of the things that I've learned through that journey is that most business owners, small to medium, let's say, and even I don't even think bigger ones sometimes, but the small to medium, who's ever taught them how to read a financial statement, a balance sheet? And even more importantly, like those two things are pretty common language. But what I found is when I ask a business owner, send me your cash flow statement, they're like, what do you
Right.
mean my cash flow
What's that?
statement? Because they manage business like we all do, I think, from entrepreneurial perspective in the beginning. So, I love that you shared that story. And the thing, I study people's body language. It still impacts you. I can tell it still impacts you. But going back to that point, it's important. So I'm so glad that you shared that. So let me ask you this: in the journey, because you've started businesses, you've sold businesses, you continue to acquire businesses. What are some of the categories, if you may, or the lessons that you've learned that you wish you would have learned them earlier?
Well, one thing I wish I wish I would have learned basic accounting earlier,
Yeah,
as I just said. I mean, I'll say that I'll go and speak sometimes to students or to very young entrepreneurs, and they say, what do you wish you knew? Similar question, and I'll
right.
say I wish somebody would have told me um, how to read a basic P&L and how to pay my taxes, because I didn't know how to do those things.
Right.
I dug myself out of that hole. When I worked that napkin plan, that was the first year that we generated in excess of $1 million because we focused. And so that's one of the things I wish somebody would have told me, that focusing, doing one thing exceptionally well is better than doing 100 things kind of meh.
Right.
But I'll tell this story and I'll describe this like, oh, it's my $1 million napkin because I generate $1 million. Now, the other side of that story is the way I dug myself out of the hole and paid back all that debt is I didn't pay my taxes.
Mm.
I didn't know I was supposed to. It's not like I was buying Lamborghinis, right? I was operating under this delusion that if you spend it all, you don't have to send it to the government. Well, guess what?
Right.
That's not true. And
Yeah.
so what am I really talking about here? Basic cash flow management. Like
Yeah.
understanding that when cash comes in, that's not all yours, right?
Right.
You need to immediately set aside some percentage that's going to need to go to taxes. And you need to have a qualified tax advisor, accountant, CPA, who's going to tell you what that amount is and just
Yeah.
move it all over. And if it's a little bit more than what you need, cool. You can take it
Yeah.
back out. But immediately that comes in, the tax people say, pay yourself first. Look, I'm going to pay the people with missiles first. Okay. The government's got freaking missiles and they can take away your liberty. So they get it. They get first dibs. Now,
Yep.
second, me, right? Yeah. So I
Right.
love the idea. Let's peel off, 10%. Let's make sure I'm paying myself a salary. I wish somebody would have said, pay yourself a salary.
Yep.
Don't just, take distributions. You're going to take too much in good times and not enough in lean times. Pay yourself a fair and reasonable salary. Take that off the top.
Right.
Right. Now, be clear on what your major expenses are and make sure that you set aside for those as well. And then build up some kind of rainy day emergency fund. 3 months, 6 in the beginning. God dang it. Just have a month's worth of cash sitting around there so that you're not spending, so that you're, spending yesterday's dollar, today, as opposed to always catching up. It's basic personal finance stuff. Really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basic. If you'll just buy a basic personal finance book, people can talk. You mentioned I shared a stage with Dave Ramsey. I have so much respect for Dave Ramsey. Don't fully apply to all of Dave Ramsey's, 100% no debt. I get why he does. But if you'll buy or just read what Dave Ramsey teaches on personal finance and apply that to business, basic cash flow, just that would have saved me a fortune. So cash flow management was one lesson. Here's another biggie that I had to learn, the hard way too many times. Good people don't fix broken systems. Broken systems break good people. The number of times, and everybody says that it's a who not how, that every problem is a people problem. That's true in the abstract. But what I've found is if I just keep hurling human beings at a problem that I couldn't fix myself, maybe it's more of a structural systems issue than just not having the right person.
Yeah.
And so solve for the systems first, let the people come later. Then you got every reason in the world to hold your people accountable to following the system that's created. So those are just a couple. Man, I could keep going forever.
Oh, I know.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Well, here's what I take away from what you said, and I love it in that always people have perspective, right? Like you talk about Dave Ramsey, and I remember reading early on in my life, The Millionaire Next Door, and the concept in there about driving a car until it's got 250,000 miles on it. And I could just never buy into that, right? And like, that wasn't my deal. And yet what you're really saying is you take pieces from the people, the books, the mentors, and then you apply those to you, but yet that's still a system, right? It's still fundamentally a system. And I know we're going to talk about Scalable in just a second, but that's really what I took away, from that read was that. And that's my background. I love that part of it. And yet as entrepreneurs, we never learn that, early enough in the journey. Let me ask you this. What's the biggest mistake you made? And then I want to ask you about the biggest success in your entrepreneurial journey. So we might have already heard the biggest mistake, but is that the biggest?
I wish that was the biggest mistake.
Yeah, well, I knew that.
I wish that was the biggest mistake. Yeah, look, getting myself in $330,000 in debt was a huge mistake. Not paying my taxes and getting myself in $300,000 in debt to the government was a big mistake. In both of those, though, the lessons that I learned and how I dug myself out of them were so phenomenal that, like, do I regret that they happened? Yeah, that sucked. Like, I wish I could have learned those lessons another way.
Yeah.
But there's neither of those are the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake that I made was firing myself from my own business because I believed that I didn't have what it took to grow it to the next level.
Wow.
And I am all for, by the way, exiting.
Right.
I'm all for hiring your replacement. But I believe it should happen on a good day. I'm all for quitting, but quit on a good day. And I think that's an important distinction.
Wow.
And what I did is I reached a point where I just decided I didn't have what it took. And clearly I was out of my depth and over my skis, and I needed adult supervision. And so I fired myself. I had all the entrepreneurial imposter syndrome you could imagine.
Wow.
And I fired myself, and I brought in a seasoned CEO, a seasoned executive to come in. And this person in about 6 months lost literally we lost millions of dollars. All of our best people were either fired or run off, and the company nearly went bankrupt. Now, that's not everybody's experience. And I want to be looking back on it, I own a lot of that failure.
Sure.
Because I abdicated responsibility.
Yeah.
It was hot potato. So there were a lot of mistakes that were made in terms of, I should have hired better. I should check better references. I should have had better controls and oversight, like all those things. But the biggest mistake that I made was I fired myself, and I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to leave the business.
Right.
I fired myself. And that's a big difference between firing yourself and retiring yourself. So that's by far the biggest mistake I ever made.
Interesting. Yeah. And you talk about, the replacing yourself and the process and the system that you went through, and, then maybe not inspecting what you expected. And so that's what a big mistake, but what a great learning opportunity to share with people, because I think sometimes we do have bad days, right? Or we do hit a ceiling, and it's like easy to kind of throw our hands up. And it's funny, it's not funny, but it's ironic that sometimes that's when people sell their businesses, when they really don't need to. They just need to take a step back and take a breath from it.
Can I speak to that just real quickly? Because I think this is important. And I want everybody listening, if you're there, to hear this, because it's the question that I asked. I asked it of one of our clients yesterday. She's been just beyond frustrated. Business has been, flat and struggling. She feels like she's beating her, head against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, I just think, I think I need to sell it. I think it need to be done. And she could sell it, and it would be fine. It'd be okay.
Sure.
And the question that I asked, and it's a question that a good friend and mentor asked me at another time. Are you running to something, or are you running from something?
I love it.
And I think when you sell, make sure that you sell because you're running to something better, that you visualize that. But all too often, when we're in the swamp, when we're just swimming in it and it's thick and it's stinky, all that we can imagine is something else must be better.
Right.
Right. And so we envision and imagine this glorious ideal that probably isn't real and probably isn't true. And in reality, this is a season, and it's a season that we need to just power through. If you got kids, if you've had kids, I had 4. Look, sometimes you're quite literally covered in crap. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you don't get rid of the kid.
Yeah.
Right. Like
You'd like
it's a
to,
part,
but you can't.
that's a bad day. Like
Yeah,
we don't
that's a
want that
bad
to
day.
happen. Next time
Yeah.
I'm going to put down time. I'm going to arrange things differently. I'm going to
Oh,
learn from this experience,
yeah.
but I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to get rid of the kid, you know,
Right.
because what I got here is actually pretty great. And
Yeah.
so yes, leave. Yes, find your replacement. Yes, sell one day if that's what you want, but do it on a good day.
I love it. So you mentioned, I'm going to come to the success in a second, but you mentioned mentors. Who are some of your mentors? I mean, I know who some of them might be, but who are they? Who are some of your top mentors?
I'm privileged to call one of my mentors, you know, my business partners, and you know, in Roland. And it's funny
He's one of
because
my mentors too.
yeah.
I love
Well,
it.
and what's
Yeah.
funny is, you know, I met Roland because he joined my mastermind.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to think about mentors as situational mentors, because there are some people who you can learn from and they can mentor you in certain areas, but not every area. And I think sometimes we'll place these mentors on an ivory tower and want to embody every aspect of them. But some of my, I'm not going to name names, but there are some people who I don't like very much who I would call mentors.
Right.
Because I believe if you only learn from people you like, your learning is limited.
Right.
And also, some of the best mentors are anti-mentors. I'm not going to do what that person did. You know, growing up, I had a stepdad for a period of time. He wasn't a good enough dude, whatever.
Right.
But when I think about so much of the ways that I approached money and wealth and success, it was because I saw him as a kid and the way that he pursued it. And he was always frustrated, always miserable, and always bitter. And so almost everything that I did when I didn't know what I was doing was I'm going to do the opposite of him. And it's amazing how well it worked.
Yeah.
Find somebody who sucks. And if you, it's the Costanza thing, right?
Yeah.
If I just do the opposite.
Yeah, I love it.
But I mean, giving some other names, Roy H. Williams, who wrote the book, The Wizard of Ads, is one of my mentors. I mean, you're talking about somebody who is just an absolute marketing and messaging genius, but he's also an amazing like husband, father. I mean, just a great human overall. So I'm blessed to have so many great mentors. But I also think some of the best mentors they're dead, but they wrote books.
Right. Right.
The best mentors come from books. So when I think about mentor, it's very much like a lowercase m. It's a category. It's not this like literal human that quote unquote mentors me.
Yeah, well, books are mentors, right? And so yeah, videos are mentors, and content can be mentors. Okay, so I'm gonna before we jump, I'm gonna ask you your biggest success, and I'm gonna ask you one question on family. So talk about your biggest success in your entrepreneurial journey.
You know, I don't think I've ever been asked this question before. I don't know.
I ask good questions, Ryan. That's my deal.
You do.
I ask good questions.
And it's hard because I don't, you know, it's hard for me to pinpoint my biggest success because I like to think that my biggest success is still in front of me.
Right.
If you were to just look, I mean, we've had some exits that put many tens of millions of dollars in the bank. That just from the outside looking in, you'd have to say that some of these exits, whether it was Traffic and Conversion Summit or some of the other ones we had, that would have been big. But I actually think some of my biggest successes was recovering from some of the holes that I was in. To step back into that business that I had fired myself, and this person, you know, it was at the 6-month mark when I knew I had a problem. It was 9 months when I was really scared, and it wasn't until about 12 months in when I finally pulled the trigger. What a freaking coward was I! But when I finally did it and removed this person and stepped back in, I truly think that one of the biggest successes there was the turnaround that we had in this company. Now, I got to be careful because if I identify too much with that, then and I did this. There was a period in my career where I was the firefighter and I was the savior.
Yeah.
And that's so dangerous. And so I think part of the reason that I don't identify with any of my successes, I don't recognize them. And it's a flaw of mine, by the way. My wife has told me this. I don't celebrate success because I expect to win. And I almost don't enjoy it, which is bad. Like that's bad. Like that's not good. It's an area of growth. But I think one of the reasons that I don't like to fixate too much on successes is because I never want to let that success define me. So there you go. That was just me vomiting all manner of my own internal dialogue all over you.
I love it. Well, okay. So I'm like you, I share. Someone's once shared with me that particular piece in my life. And what they said is, be content with the success, but never be complacent. And that allows me to celebrate the success, right? Because if you don't celebrate the success, then you've really missed an opportunity. So there you go. There's my contribution to you today. Okay, quick question. Talk to me about the biggest thing, the journey of the balance, because you've talked about this in the podcast. I've heard you talk about it in many different areas, the balance of the family and how you do that as an entrepreneur. Like, just give listeners, just give us a little bit on that, because you've got a lot of businesses, right? Like, how many do you have right now that you're involved with? About?
Within our portfolio, I think last count there was 17. I'm not active. I don't have active portfolio oversight of all of them. Roland has some. We've got some of them are minority holdings. There's really 3 businesses that I have an active sort of participatory. I'm expected to show up on like calls and meetings from time to time. That's still a lot,
It's a lot.
And so yeah.
So how do you balance the family and because I know you do. I mean, I hear it in your conversations.
I'm better now. It wasn't always that way. Back in 2016, we had 3 different companies simultaneously on the Inc. 500 list in our portfolio. That sounds really cool. The side of that story that I don't tell is that that same year, I was basically, I'd leave for work before my kids were awake. I'd get home after they were all in bed. I missed soccer games. I missed dance recitals. It was a small miracle if I made it home for a family dinner. I'd see my families on the weekends, but I wasn't there, mentally. And it really took coming home late at midnight one night, walking in to, my wife still sitting up in bed, waiting for me, and saying to me, "Hey, you keep doing what you're doing. I know who I married, but you can't pretend like you're doing it for us anymore." Holding a mirror up in my face saying, Is that what you like? Keep in mind, this is the same woman that I started the business so I could buy her engagement ring.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot I've learned balance, to the extent that you can call it that, by getting wildly
counterbalancing, right? Yeah.
And by just thankfully, mercifully, like having a wife who was patient with me and who would call me on my crap before it was too late. So I think step number 1 is to have an amazing partner. And I don't know that everybody necessarily has that, but I do, and I am thankful for it. But I'll tell you practically, tactically what we do. So at the end of every year, we celebrate Christmas at the house, and then as soon as the day after Christmas, we drive down to our beach house on the Texas coast. And from Christmas to New Year's, that is just our time to chill as a family. But then every morning, my wife and I, for a couple of days, and we'll literally take a couple hours every morning for 3 or 4 days, and we will say, what do we want the next year to look like? And I believe that your commitments show up in your wallet and your calendar. And so she gets first dibs to my calendar. And it's, when do we want to block off a family trip? And so every single summer, we take a month off. It's usually basically the month of June or July. Like, we're basically going to take that whole month off. We're going to go to Europe. We're going to travel to the national parks. Like, we're going to leave, no laptop, no meetings, no nothing. Like, I'm shut off for a full 30 days. So that gets blocked off. We don't always know where we're going. That's fine, but we block it on the calendar. We're going to do a couple of trips for the 2 of us. We're going to make sure that all the kids' events get, put in to the extent that we know them. And then we start piling in the business rocks. Now, certain things that are scheduled years in advance, like Traffic and Conversion Summit, still own 20% of that. That's still responsibility. Our mastermind meetings, some of these that are, they're there, but they're scheduled knowing that we want to try to avoid certain things. But by and large, she gets first dibs on calendar. And then I make sure that, I work at 9 to 5. And I'll tell you, it gets honored because it's on the calendar. My executive assistant knows we're not going to schedule anything there. And, Deanna or whoever's helping to run the event knows, like, oh, we can't book something on that because Ryan's gone.
Right.
So just getting it on the calendar and blocking it off, that has made the biggest difference in the world.
That's half the battle. Gary Keller wrote a book, The One Thing, and I've got a background with Keller Williams, so obviously I know that book really well. But he talks about counterbalancing, and in that he also talks about exactly, what you're talking about, in that those family commitments have to go in first, otherwise they won't ever go in. I'm going to put a ribbon on this. You said something which the question she asked, your wife asked you, was, are you doing this for us? And that's such a great question. Am I doing it for myself? Am I doing it for my family? Just to bring that clarity. So I've heard you tell that story before, and I'm so glad that you brought it out, because it's a great question. Because I've been there.
I had to acknowledge that no, I was doing it for my own ego. Yeah. I was doing it for my own pride. I was doing it for my own fear of failure. But who am I really worried about disappointing? Because they would love me anyway. Yeah. Myself, also known as ego. So yeah, no, she was.
We get caught up, right? We get caught up, and before we know it, it's like, whoa, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah. How'd I get here?
Okay. I am just excited for this next part. So I'm going to flash this book to y'all. If you're not listening or watching the video, it's Get Scalable. And I believe I'm a systems guy, and I've had people share that with me. And yet when I read this book, Ryan, I went, holy crap, I probably left $10 million on the table in the last year based upon the success that we had because of what I didn't have that was in this book. So I don't even know where to start other than, talk to us about what was the impetus for the book and what would people take away from it. I mean, I'm going to let you go on this part because I'm excited. Yeah.
The impetus of the book is like, what is all the stuff that I wish I would have known when, all the bad stuff happened? Like, how could I have avoided that? What do I wish, I would have done differently? Because I made all the mistakes, because I didn't know. And look, eventually I did get around to reading all the books. I read the Traction and the Scaling Up, and am, privileged to call many of these authors like friends.
Right.
But, and again, I say this with all due respect, because I feel like a lot of these books, I think about like the E-Myth, they have so many great ideas in them, but there was still something missing. And it didn't always work for me. And so I had to figure out my own way. And what's in the book is the way that has worked for me, for all of our different companies, and had worked for others. So I figured it was time to do it. And the foundation of everything that we do, and this is my complaint with most business books that are out there on any type of like operating system or strategic planning or systemization, they all start from the same place. And that same place is, what's your goal? What do you want to achieve? What is your goal? And I did that. And so I would do that. And they're like, well, and even I would argue even worse than that. What's your big vision? What's your mission? Right? As though step one is entrepreneurial arts and crafts vision board time. Right? And it sounds good. Yeah. It just doesn't freaking work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. And I haven't seen it work for any. There's no successful business that I've walked in and they've been like, yeah, I mean, it's all because of like, we visionated so hard. No, you will get some like post facto justification when they're trying to look like all woo woo on some main stage, but that's not how they did it. That's not how they did it. They did it through in the trenches, figuring out how do we add value? How do we create value? Like, why do we deserve to exist? And I think that is the single most important question that no business owner asks. Why do you deserve to exist? Why do you deserve to win? How do you create value? Because every business does two things. We sell stuff and we fulfill the stuff we sold. We sell and we serve. That's it. And so our thing starts from, how do you do that? And let's visualize that. Let's map that. Now, the process that we use is value chain mapping, process mapping. If anybody has an MBA or if you are Six Sigma certified, you'd roll your eyes and be like, oh, this is the most basic thing in the world. But you know what? Nobody's ever taught it to any small business owner or entrepreneur. And if they do, they try to overcomplicate it. You don't. So we just get some sticky notes and a whiteboard. And 15, 20 minutes later, you can answer the question visually. This is how we create value, right? That's the foundation. Yeah. Then you can say, okay, if this is how we create value, what are the steps and stages in that process of all those little sticky notes that we don't want to screw up? High stakes, high chance for human error, but also really important. Let's build processes and standard operating procedures for that. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they systemize their business is they believe and try to execute the documentation of everything. And man, I did this. I remember going on vacation, reading the E-Myth, and I'm not knocking the E-Myth. Okay. I'm
Right,
not
right,
it's a great book. But
right.
what I did and what I see a lot of people do is they read that book and they go, I got it. We need to document everything. So I read this book. When I get back into the office, I call an all hands meeting, which by the way, don't do that. If you find that you just read a book or you came to a conference, and so like step one is I need to call an all hands meeting, like trumpets blaring, tell everybody you're about to do something super stupid and expensive. Okay. But I did it, made all the mistakes, and I declared, okay, team, I'm not going to approve any new hires. I'm not going to greenlight any new projects. We're not going to do anything new until every single person has documented everything that you do. Well, half the people were panicked because they thought they were getting fired. The other half was pissed off because they were wondering why they got a document when they know how to do their job.
Exactly.
Even when I finally got them engaged, even when I finally got them aligned, and they did it, had all these checklists and SOPs, and we printed them out, and we put them in a binder. We had color-coded tabs dividing it up. And I remember putting all these binders on a bookshelf, and not exaggerating, we never looked at them again.
Never looked at them. No.
Not once.
Yeah.
I found them when we moved offices after COVID, and they were literally covered in dust.
Oh my gosh.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't document everything. Document the critical. How do you know it's critical? It's on one of those critical value engines. This is how customers happen. We got it visualized. This is what we do once we got them. What are the steps? Most of the businesses that we own, businesses doing many tens of millions of dollars, they might have 6, 10, almost never more than 20, what we call playbooks, SOPs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you can ask the question, okay, now who's going to do all this stuff? You know?
Yes.
And that's the third step. You don't go to your people and say, what do you do? Because you get an answer. And it may not be the right answer. You go back to your value creation process and say, this needs to be done. Who's doing it? And entrepreneurs, if you do this, you're going to hear over and over again a resounding answer, which is me. I do that one too. You want to build your hiring plan, visualize how you create value, and start handing those sticky notes off to other people.
Yeah.
Then we can build scorecards. Then you can figure out meeting rhythm in the last step of the process. Once you understand how you create value, you've systemized it. Now you can say, okay, then what are our goals?
Yes.
I think the ability to set goals is a privilege, not a right. And it's something that you get to do after you've decided how you create value. It's customer first, not your goal first. Then I would argue, let's mission, let's vision. What are we going to do? Those things, they need to happen. I'm not saying they're not important. They just happen last.
Yeah. You know, what I took away first, I love the part about the meetings. I mean, you brought so much clarity to how we're taking so much energy, time, and resources by meeting with people, and they're typically not productive meetings. And so that piece was amazing. But it also resonated with me, the value creation, because absent of value, price becomes an issue. And that's what businesses struggle with. And it's because they don't stop long enough to truly identify the value, right? And the value, which again, I'm probably paraphrasing what you said in the book, but the value isn't what you sell, so to speak, or the service you provide, it's delivering it. Really? I mean, that's right? I mean, I've got that right.
It is the combination of actions and activities that create the results for the clients and or customers. And so to not have that visualized, and there's plenty of business owners where, and by the way, but you can't create value until you've captured marketplace value in the form of a sale. So you got to do both.
Right.
We're selling and we're serving. We need to document both. And there's plenty of entrepreneurs where I say, okay, and we do it. How do you get new customers? How do you get new clients? They can tell me generally, but they can't show me. Well, we've got these ads that we run, or we've got these referral campaigns, or we exhibit at trade shows. Then people go over to this landing page and they fill out this form. And if they don't fill out this form, they go through this follow-up process. And if they do, then they go into this qualification process. And then all the way through until sale is made. Great. Now let's do it for the fulfillment side. Until you have that visualized, you can't optimize. Visualize, then optimize.
I love it. Oh, I got so much. I'd recommend books, but this book, I mean, again, there's no royalties coming to me if you're listening to this, but you absolutely, as a business owner, have to buy this book and read it, because it just breaks it down so simple in a process. And like I was telling Ryan before, we were heading out on a plane ride for 4 hours. I couldn't put the book down. I finished it on the plane ride. So Well, no, my pleasure. It's an honor to have you here today. So I want to ask you a question. So business owners are listening to this, and you've got, an amazing journey, an amazing background. You teach people how to market their businesses, which obviously creates sales. So if I'm a business owner and I'm listening to this right now, where would you tell them to start? Like, what's one of the first things or second things or third things they need to do to get to that place of counterbalancing, to get to that profitability, to get to a business that they enjoy? What would you share with them?
It needs to start with a mindset shift. And I'm not a big mindset woo guy. I'm a pretty practical, tactical guy. But I
Yeah,
do think it starts with a mindset shift. And that mindset shift is something that I call the founder's paradox. And that is, the more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is.
right.
And hearing that and believing that and accepting that as truth is step one. Because the reality is it's not true day one of your business. Day one, you are the most valuable person, and the more valuable you are, the more valuable your business is. But
Yeah,
there must come a time where your business gets bigger than you. And most of the entrepreneurs that I know, the ones that we work with, when they get frustrated and when they get burnt out, it happens because they got what they wanted to happen. It
right,
happens because their business grew.
right.
And where they get frustrated, me, why did I fire myself? Because my business got bigger than me. And it kind of pissed me off,
Yeah,
but that was the point. That was the goal all along. And nobody told me, hey, there comes a time, and incidentally, it happens at for the first time at around kind of $2 to $4 million in revenue. Some people are able to power through. It's definitely going to happen again at around, $10 to $20 million and, 20-ish million. It tends to happen on like the twos or the threes.
right.
Um, you're going to see it happen again, but your business is going to be bigger than you, and you've got to figure out, how do you replace the operating system that is you, the UOS, with an operating system that is more scalable. And every business that has scaled because it was able to grow beyond the founder, because the founder intuitively, or because they got the right advice, they were listening to a podcast like this, believe the statement, the more valuable I am to my business, the less valuable my business is. So if you want your business to become more
Yeah,
valuable, you have to be less valuable to the business. And the way that you do that is you start saying, what are the pieces that I can hand off? And you don't do it all at once by
right.
hiring an integrator. God, I hate that. I think that's one of the biggest entrepreneurial lies perpetuated. Again, with all due respect to Gino and Traction, yeah, at some point you should hire an operator,
Yeah,
right? At some point you should have a functional executive team. At some point you may even bring in a COO or a CEO and step aside. All
right.
that's fine, but this notion that like I'm going to make one magical unicorn hire who's going to do all the stuff that I don't want to do so I can just visionate all over the place is a myth.
Yeah,
It's not how it works. It happens one piece at a time. It happens by saying, okay, they're selling and they're serving. Of these two, what's the one that I believe I can start to hand off first?
sure.
Somebody's like, what's the one that I'm going to hold on to? Some people say, I need to hold on to sales a little bit longer. Fine. Let's get fulfillment handed off. Some people say, no,
Right.
I really want to own the client experience. Great. Let's get you a salesperson. Hand off one of those two. Get you a functional leader who's going to own that. Once you've done that, now you start to hand off the other one. And you're going to say, but they don't do it as well as me. That may be true at the beginning, but something
Yeah,
magical is going to happen. They're going to do it better than you. And they're
yeah,
going to do it better than you because it's all they got to worry about. And then there's
right.
going to be two people or three people. And even if they only do it 80%, there's more of them. And then magically what happens is your business starts to scale, and it does it without you. And if you
Yeah,
can just keep your ego in check and allow that to not hurt your feelings, but realize that this is actually the game that we're playing. Going back to
right,
the parenting analogy, at some point, your goal is not to raise children, it's to raise adults. You want them to leave,
right.
right? You want them
Exactly.
to leave.
Yeah.
Same is
And
true
not
for your
come back.
business.
And not come
And
back.
don't come back.
Yeah.
My son's he's turning 18. In a couple months, he's going to go off to college. And I'm sad as hell. And I've got to do business with the fact that I'm super sad. I'm going to miss him. That feels like a death almost, right? But
Yes.
it's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And the same is true for business owners. Your business at some point, if you do your job right, is going to leave.
Yep.
And it's a good thing. It means you did a good job. Now you got new questions to answer. What's going to be that next mountain I'm going to climb? What's the next thing? We can help with that. Like there's stuff for that, but don't, throw a wrench into your own business and blow it up and sabotage it just so that you can swoop in and save the day again. I mean, you can choose this if you want to, but it's not as much fun as it may seem like it is.
Well, so Ryan, what a great way to kind of put a ribbon on our entire show. I mean, that mindset piece of that shift that business owners or entrepreneurs have to have. I mean, they have to start there if they do want to kind of go through that journey in the way that they want to. So if somebody needs to get in touch with you, wants to hear more about what you guys are doing and the amazing things you're doing, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah. So I Twitter is me. So if you follow me on any of my social channels, that's probably my team posting on my behalf. But Twitter is still mine because I like it. And so twitter.com/Ryan Deiss, RYAN DEISS. My DMs are open. And so if you got any value, I just love it if you'd say, hey, I heard you on that. Thanks. Or heard you on that and I have a question, or heard you on that and thought that was stupid. Either way, like that's fun for me. It's nice to know that that people are hearing this and that you're getting value from it. And selfishly, I'd love it if they'd buy the book, and you can actually get it for free. GetScalable.com/free. It's just pay shipping, and it's literally the cost of shipping. It's $8.20. So it's available on Amazon and all that stuff. But if you want it for free, help us cover shipping, and you can get it for free.
I don't know how this happened, Ryan, but I got one book, and then I went, I think I've bought that book before, so now I have two of them. So nice. I'm helping your numbers there.
I appreciate it. Yeah, find a deserving person and give it to them.
That's right. Well, Ryan, again, thank you so much. We do just truly appreciate you being here today and your time, because I do know how valuable it is. And so thank you so much for sharing all the great things that you did. We appreciate it. Listeners, please share our episodes with wherever you listen to your podcasts, and wherever you're journeying and talking with other entrepreneurs and business owners. We do bring valuable content to you each and every time we talk, and the folks that we bring provide some amazing value. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening or watching. Take care. Take care, Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining Destination Business Freedom with Pat Mancuso. May the insights and strategies shared guide you towards financial prosperity and personal freedom. Continue to navigate boldly. Until next time, keep transforming challenges into achievements. Farewell, and stay the course.